unanimous. Next item is 8D. Ms. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the City Council, tonight we have before you a culmination of many discussions relative to the governor's order on the drought in California. And we have been working on a lot of items relative to how we implement the governor's directive, because that directive wasn't necessarily all too specific in many areas. So we're making an attempt to show how we can comply. And you have before you a variety of regulations and procedures that are attempting to come to how we will do enforcement of the drought regulations. And so I'm going to turn the floor over to Royce Cunningham, who's our Director of Utilities, and Ramiro Jimenez, who's our Water Conservation Manager, and he wears many other hats, but this is one of the big ones he's wearing. So I'll turn the floor over to you two gentlemen to review what's before the council tonight.
Thank you, City Manager Kuhn. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We're here tonight to talk about some additional water conservation measures in response to the continued drought. A little tweaking of our water conservation program, some more nuances and adding some more layers to the program. There are 4 items for the council's consideration this evening. The first item is amendments to our outdoor irrigation limitations. You're familiar that we do have some already in place. The second item is revisions to our urban water shortage contingency plan language regarding penalties for excessive water use. The third item is to direct staff to implement seasonal water use allocations. And the fourth item is implementation of fines for violations of water use prohibitions and penalties for, let me finish reading that one, please. Don't quite have it memorized. And penalties for excessive water use. As you are aware, the council has waived penalties and fines up until this point during our water conservation measures. So let's go to the first one. The first one is to amend the outdoor irrigation limitations. What staff is recommending that the limitations on outdoor irrigation of lawns and other areas only apply to sprinkler irrigation systems. This is a key change from what we've done previously. We're focusing on sprinkler irrigation systems. It is one of the more inefficient means of irrigating. We're recommending that selective hand watering of individual plants, potted plants, and hanging plants, it's proposed that that not be restricted. Many people have plants in pots. They tend to dry out much faster than, say, plants that are in the ground. And the 2-day-a-week limitations that we currently have in place, we're getting a lot of comments from people that their plants are dying. They're dying after a day or two. So we're recommending that we allow the selective hand watering of these. We also recommend that watering by sprinkler system be restricted to 2 specific days of the week. Currently, people get to choose which 2 days they water. We're recommending that we identify specific days of the week, also by geographic location, and as we are currently, between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. So let's talk a little bit about the watering by days of the week. So the days to the water using sprinkler systems, we're recommending that residential properties north of Interstate 80 be allowed to water on Mondays and Thursdays. Residential properties south of I-80 water on Tuesdays and Fridays. Commercial and industrial properties water on Wednesdays and Saturdays. And institutional properties such as schools and the parks still be allowed to water 2 days per their choice. And the reason is the parks are spread out throughout the city. The schools are spread out throughout the city. Most of the parks and the school sites are all on automatic controllers, so they can program for 2 days so that they balance their water use. This entire program is set up so that we balance water demand within the city, so that we don't have, say, on a Monday, everybody in the city waters, and Tuesday, nobody waters, and we suddenly have this dramatic drop in water use. It affects the operation of the system, the efficiency of the system. So this is what that looks like for the residential properties. You see that Interstate 80 travels from the southwest to the northeast through Vacaville on a diagonal, and the horizontal hatched area would be north of I-80. Those residential properties would water Mondays and Thursdays, and the more checkered area to the south of I-80 would water on Tuesdays and Fridays.
For a second, Councilman Monroe has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we discussed in previous meetings, and maybe we're changing it right now, but for our parks, I know we were saying we're going to let them go brown. are we saying that we can only water our parks now 2 days a week?
That is correct.
And there's no exception even, and I know Martin Ayala was just here. He was going to talk about losing his field, his soccer fields, because he doesn't want to play on dead grass. None of the kids are going to want to play on dead grass. Is there any exception for, is there anything that we can work with?
There's nothing that we are proposing to council, but obviously this is a discretionary consideration on the council's part. The council could direct otherwise. A little anecdotal note, I was driving down Elmira Road earlier this week, and I noticed some sprinklers on about 8:30 a.m. One of them was at Vacaville Middle School, and I stopped. You'll see a picture of it later on. But the gentleman who was running the controllers, I stopped and I chatted with him, a school maintenance guy. And he said, well, we got a call that there was a broken sprinkler and there was a geyser out here, so I'm trying to find it. And so I started asking him about how frequently you're watering and how's it working out. And the school's properties are browning up pretty good, as are our parks. And the one comment he made to me that struck a chord a little bit was, he said, we've been getting a lot of phone calls from athletic directors of the high schools and the middle schools that the dry grass, the kids in PE, they've got tennis shoes on. They don't have cleats, they have tennis shoes on. And the dry grass is somewhat slippery. And the athletic directors and the coaches are calling saying, we're starting to see an increase in injuries. So it has been discussed here. This is something I just heard this week. It is something that the council could certainly consider. The school district is one of our larger customers, obviously, a lot of lawn space, and the Parks Department is actually our largest customer, a lot of lawn space. So I certainly hear what people are saying. We don't want kids to get hurt. So we could look at some modifications of that. I know that Steve Hartwig, our Public Works Director, what they're trying to do is focus additional watering during the 2 days a week in the ball field areas where they know they get a lot of activity, to try to keep those a little more greener. Where there's a decorative piece of lawn in a park, they're letting that get browner because it's not getting quite the activity, the kids running and playing. So we certainly want to work with the school district. We can talk with them about watering patterns and things like that. But right now, as I sit here and speak before you, we do have a 2-day-a-week limitation that the council adopted previously.
Thank you.
So the question pops up, well, what is or is not restricted? And so I've taken a few photographs here. In the upper left photograph, this is a sprinkler system on a lawn at a local apartment complex. It's about 8:30 in the morning. Technically, it's in violation of our current prohibitions. Obviously, you see water on the sidewalk there. They probably could get a citation for that. But that's not the point of this photograph. The point of this photograph is to show you that we're proposing to place restrictions on sprinkler systems. Likewise, the lower right, well, that's the Vacaville Middle School site that I just talked to you about. And same thing, the school sites are restricted to 2 days a week, but not specific days. By the way, that upper left corner, the apartment complex, that would be considered a commercial property. The upper right is Ramiro here watering his potted plants using a handheld watering can. And lower left is this seedy-looking character here watering his potted plants using a hose with a control nozzle attachment. Now, we've recently received some phone calls from people asking further clarification. Well, what if I have one of those small sprinklers that shoots water straight up in the air on a hose in my lawn? Is that restricted? Well, right now my proposal would be yes. And the reason is, if that person decided they wanted to go run some errands and they got tied up in errands and that sprinkler ran for 40 or 50 minutes, they could obviously flood the street. Another one, a person asked, well, if you're going to allow this hand watering of flower pots, why not allow drip irrigation systems to be exempted from this? And I actually agree with the drip irrigation system is not a sprinkler system. They're much more controlled. They release a lot less water than a sprinkler. So I would advocate that, yeah, I would consider that kind of a form of selective hand watering. So what are others doing? This is a list of 8 communities in Northern California. Many of them are neighbors. What you'll see is the population of the community. You'll see what their mandatory goal from the state is and what their current watering restrictions are. A couple of examples of communities that have lower goals than us, Benicia and Fairfield, have 20% goals. They're both allowing 3 days a week watering. Fairfield does have some specific days of the week. You'll notice in this table here that on the far right, where they have their watering restrictions, every single community has different times of the day that they allow or don't allow watering. The communities that have 28% reductions, they're all at 2 days per week, as are Vacaville, Lodi, Lincoln, and Folsom, which are also at 32%. So what we're proposing in our program is pretty typical of what the toolbox consists of for communities to try to reduce their water use. So the next item for your consideration tonight is the language revisions to the Urban Water Shortage Contingency Plan. And staff feels that this is necessary in order for the city to implement excessive water use penalties. The penalty system that was adopted in the plan in 1991 is very difficult to apply in our finance billing system. One of our working groups was a finance group, and we tried out how can we get the system, the current penalty system to work. And it's a very complicated mathematical formula, and it was very hard, very difficult to get the system to actually apply it. The other thing that we found was the penalty system, which actually has never been adopted, and it's never been used. It was adopted, but it was never been used. That it resulted in some very large penalties for excessive water use. And I'll show you an example here in a second. So what we're recommending, staff is recommending that we apply a simpler formula with a straight percentage, 25%, that would be a penalty on the variable water use portion of the water bill. And allow me to run through an example real quick. So let's say a customer uses 80 units of water during a billing period when 48 units is allowed. The variable portion of the water bill would be 12 units times $1.24 per unit, which is the Tier 1 rate, plus 68 units times $1.70 per unit, which is the Tier 2 rate, and their variable portion of their water bill would total $130.48. Under the proposed new revised system, the penalty on that would be $130.48 times 25%, which is $32.62. Yeah, that's a pretty good penalty. Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Harris.
So I understand, this method. What I'm still not clear on is if you look at the example 1 and example 2 of customer John Q. Public, and you look at the account balance or the account summary, does our system allow you to actually identify the number of units or the number of gallons in that summary so that you have that calculation that you can follow? That's what I'm not seeing in this particular example.
Yes, our system does have that, and you're not seeing that in that, but when you see the entire bill, it actually does identify the units that have been consumed. So you would see that on your bill. Okay.
All right, thank you.
The units consumed and the variable bill amount of the bill is also shown, identified separately.
I don't know if this is even germane but to the situation, but how did it ever come out that one unit is 748 gallons? I
do not know the history of that. Actually, one unit is 100 cubic feet.
Correct.
And 100 cubic feet is 748 gallons.
It just turned out that way. Okay.
Somebody decided at some point in time, let's use 100 cubic feet as a unit, and it turns out to be 748 gallons.
And it is a standard that just everyone is using.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
And it's very confusing for many people. Yeah. And wait till we go metric, boy, then it's going to really be fun. And the last bullet here is under the old penalty system, the penalty for the same water use would have been $221. So for a $130 variable portion of the water bill, the old system, the penalty would have been about 160% for just the penalty. So the penalties were pretty high. So the third item for consideration tonight is residential seasonal allocations. This is turning out to be somewhat controversial. We're getting a lot of feedback from the public on this. This is essentially water rationing. So the proposal that we're putting forth to the council is to base our seasonal allocations on a single-family residence and their base residential allocation based upon winter water use. And that's when very little landscape irrigation is going on. It's almost 100% household water use. So we're recommending that 60 gallons per person per day is a reasonable winter water use. The state recommends 55 gallons. I'm a round number kind of guy, and so the 60 gallons per day looks better to me. So for a family of 5, that 60 gallons per person would translate to be 300 gallons per day in the winter months. And turning that into the units, it turns out to be 12 units per month in the wintertime. Now, we've found that our multifamily residential customers, people that live in apartments, condos, things like that, they tend to use less water than single-family homes, even in the wintertime. It's generally about 70%. So we're recommending that the allocation for multifamily residential be 70% or 8 units per month of what the single-family residence is. So some other things that we're recommending as part of this program is that the allocations are proposed to be increased incrementally for seasonal adjustments to allow some landscape irrigation to take place. We're also proposing that additional allocations of 2 units per person per month may be granted for larger households than 5, up to a maximum of 8 people per household. My belief, I've lived here for 28 years. I came here to raise my family. This is a family community. So my focus on this program, it's about providing water for families for public health. It is granted, it's at the expense of landscaping, but that's also what the state has mandated. The state is focusing on landscape reductions. So I'm focusing on let's provide water for families so that families can meet their needs. We're also suggesting that additional allocations may be made for severe medical conditions that require higher water use. Obviously, we would want some medical proof of that. And finally, that exceeding the allocation would result in a penalty for excessive water use that would be applied to the utility bill. So what does this look like? Well, you can see the top bullet is winter. It's November through February, and it's 12 units per household per month. In the springtime, we increased that by 50%, so that would be 18 units per household per month. In the summertime, we double the base amount to 24 units per household per month. And then in the fall, we drop back to similar to the springtime, a 50% increase. The table that you see here shows by month what the units would be, what the gallons per household use would be, and what this totals up to is the total allocation of units per calendar year would be 216 units per household per year. And the last bullet here, just for your information, in 2013, 76% of Vacaville's residential customers met or were below the 216 units per year. That's back in 2013. In 2014, 83% of our residential customers met or were below that 216. So really what we're focusing on here is over 4/5 of our community is already meeting these allocations. It's the 17% that are way over. So what does this look like graphically? This is the proposed allocations versus 2013. The blue bars are the months, starting with June on the left, our current month. And the blue bar is the 2013 use, and the red bar is the allocation. What I'd like you to focus on here is you see the dip in the winter months. Ramiro is highlighting it here. And you'll notice that the allocation, the red bar, is not much below the actual winter water use in 2013. So we feel that in the wintertime, we'll be just fine. But if we want to reach this 32% target of the states, it's those summer months where you see the blue bar much higher than the red bar that we need to focus on water conservation. So how is everyone else doing? Well, this is actually a chart that's put out by the state, and this is for April. And the purple, the upper right-hand corner, you see the bar chart there. The darker the purple, that's 30% or greater reduction in water use. As you move to the right, the gold means they're 20% over their 2013 water use. And I highlighted a few of the cities that you saw on the previous table. Vacaville, we were at 24%. Fairfield was a slightly lighter purple, so I'm going to speculate that they were in the teens. Benicia was a very dark purple, so they were over 30. Folsom, on the way over to the right, a large purple dot, is over 30. Roseville is in the 20s. Elk Grove was in the 30s. Those are just some of our neighbors. But the thing you'll notice here is almost all of Northern California is conserving a lot of water. There's only a couple of gold dots here, and those are in the San Francisco Peninsula area. The final item for your consideration tonight is implementation of fines and penalties. So for violation of the water use prohibitions, it is proposed that these be implemented, if council adopts this tonight, beginning July 1st. The first offense would be education. We would provide educational materials, talk to the customer about water use, and try to educate them some more. The second offense would be a $50 citation, and the citation would be waived if they complete an online water school. We're right now wrapping up putting together an online water school, much like traffic school. You go online, you take the class, you listen to or watch the material, and then take a little test. The third offense would be a $100 citation, and subsequent offenses would increase in $50 increments up to a maximum of a $500 fine in a given year. The last bullet here highlights that there is an administrative appeal process, and it is per Section 1330 of the city's municipal code.
Councilman Mashburn.
Real quickly, Royce, those penalties, if you can go back a slide, sir.
Sure.
Are those in addition to the fees that you would pay for overage on your water usage, or are those fees, are these citations for people who water the sidewalk or wash their driveway off?
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is the latter. These are, I use the two terms fines for violating the prohibitions. Washing your car with a hose with no attachment in the middle of the street and water's running down the gutter. That's a violation, and it's subject to a fine. The penalties are for excessive water use. So this is the former. This is for violating the water use prohibitions. So our code enforcement people would be issuing these citations. The second item is for excessive water use. So these would be the penalties for excessive water use, and it is proposed that implementation, if council adopts this, what we're proposing tonight, that the implementation of this would begin with the billing period that starts on July 6th. So we wouldn't do something retroactive. It would be for the fresh billing period that starts early next month. That the penalty for excessive water use proposed would be 25% of the variable portion of the water bill. And like the fines, there is an appeal process, and it is per Section 1330 of the Municipal Code. Last time I was before the council, we received some recommendations from council that we improve the website. So I did a couple screenshots here for you today. You'll notice that we have highlighted this center button with a red arrow, water conservation information. Click here, and when someone clicks on that water conservation button, this following screen shows up. And what we've added here are some links. On the left-hand side, there are a number of links to different questions that you might have, conservation. There's in Spanish. There's a Spanish piece here. The two photographs that you see photographed in the middle here, the question is, what do I do if I am if you're a residential customer, you would click on that house there, and some information on residential customer restrictions would show up. If you're a commercial, industrial, institutional customer, you click on the, looks like the downtown plaza, and you'd click on that, and then some of our commercial industrial type restrictions would pop up. And then at the very bottom page here, you see it, there's a question, I want to know, and then there's a number of items. How much water am I using? You click on that, and it would go to the table where you can look up your account number, and you can see how much water you're using. There's a number of questions like that, and I have to apologize. Even though I'm wearing my glasses, I really can't read them from here, so a little bit embarrassing. But this is really good information. I do believe it's an improvement on the website, but it's not the end. We want to continue improving it. We want this to be a good product for our customers.
Vice Mayor Hunt.
I think that's fantastic. The link that says how much water am I using, if you were to go to that link, they'll give you the amount that you're using, but will they also give you a comparison as to where your targets are? So you can say, I'm using this amount, and here's what I should be using? So there's some relevance?
It's just actual water use. What if you click on, I want to know how much I used in 2013. It would show it by billing period, how much you used in 2013. If you click on 2014,
right,
it would show that.
But I guess the question is, not a lot of people watch this, or not a lot of people attend these. So if I were to click on that, it would be nice for me to go, I'm using this amount, but my target is this amount, so I'll know whether I'm within my amounts.
Well, we don't have individual targets. We don't have individual targets in terms of percentages.
Okay.
We have the allocation system.
Right.
So
I just think for me to be relative, I wouldn't, frankly, know if I checked on how much I'm using. I wouldn't know if that was high or low, or maybe you could rank me in terms of where you are in relationship. Or
this information comes right out of our billing system. So what we can do is we can check with our finance department to say, can the spreadsheet that has this data in it, can we somehow include a column or something that provides that
maybe
information?
my name comes up in red or something if I'm not.
Name doesn't show up.
I don't know.
We do respect privacy
here.
here. The account number is what is listed by.
Councilman Mashburn.
But good point. We will look into that.
Councilman Mashburn.
I just had a quick question, Royce. This goes to what we were just talking about with allocations and the public being able to check on them. And I'm taking a stretcher. I'm going to tie this back to what Councilman Roulette said about the need for water in certain areas and certain parks, and how some organizations are concerned about that. If an individual can keep track of the number of allocations that they have and their usage, and we can show that we have a significant amount of savings. And I'll just use an example. I used 22 units last billing cycle, and my allocation was 24. It's just an example. I have no idea what I really used. But I have 2 extra units, similar to my my data plan. Would it be possible for us to capture those so that those citizens who want to utilize their units or give them to their organization could do so that they could use them to keep their fields green?
Well, being an engineer, we have a saying in engineering, all things are possible given enough money and enough time. But to more directly answer your question, our billing system, and I certainly am not an expert on the billing system, Jeremy Craig, the assistant city manager, having been the finance director, is, I'm going to speculate here a little bit, but we'll check into it, is I do know that every time we go in and make individual changes to individual accounts, they can only be hand entered. We have 26,000 residential customers. So to go in and hand enter things like that, like banking units, would have to be hand entered. That's my belief. And Jeremy could certainly say, nod up and down, Jeremy, or shake back and forth. But I believe they would have to be hand entered. So for 26,000 customers.
The reason I asked that is that you said that on my bill, for me and under my account, it'll give me a total for my yearly usage. It'll say in 2013, just a couple minutes ago, I used X amount of water. If I used X amount of water and we know exactly how much water I'm supposed to have, as a resident, couldn't I say, if I still have 200 units that I didn't use, I would like to, I don't need you to figure out exactly, I just want to be able to credit the soccer folks with my 200 units. So they get to use an extra 200 units of water that they're not having to pay a fee for or a fine for. That's all I was asking. I don't need you to calculate each specific person's usage monthly. Is there a way that they can be forgiven for a certain amount of usage?
We can certainly check with the finance department to see if we do that.
I'm just saying, if it can be done, maybe it's a way to help mitigate some ballparks or some fields or something. I know my kids would love to pony up their extra units so that they could have a green field to play on.
Stop thinking tomatoes.
I don't even want to go there when I was thinking about what that would do, but it is this is a state mandate that's come down, and it wasn't well thought out when it was proposed, and so we're trying to all struggle with it. All the cities are trying to struggle with it. We have different goals to meet, and it's really tough. And I think people on their own would probably do pretty well. I think the city of Vacaville, as I see the residents calling me and talking to them, are ready to help. It's unfortunate that we have to, because we've had planned for the droughts and we have plenty of water, but we have to save it anyhow because there are other people who didn't plan for it.
We would have liked to have had the opportunity before being given a 32% mandate.
Yeah.
We would have loved to have had the opportunity to sit down with the state, show them what we're doing, and then maybe compromise on a mandated water conservation number that was a little more reasonable, because the 32% number is pretty extreme.
Well, I think you've added some things in there that are helpful. The one, I think, for larger families is certainly important, and that's probably a good thing. But, like I brought up the question about how many gallons is a unit, simply because, it's so complicated. It really is. And then the billing system, where you can't just start on the first of the month or that sort of thing. It's computers are controlling us now, let's face it. And beyond that, I am concerned about saying you can water 2 days a week, but can you water for 12 hours? I mean, that's what you're saying. As long as it's not running out over the street and over the sidewalk, why, you're okay. So, there's got to be some guidelines, or, people just don't know how much water they use because it's been a system of units. Who knows what a unit is? I just find out now. I mean, I'm just looking at my bill now. I never worried about it before, and I am worried about it now.
And we are putting some of that information on the website in terms of different choices that people could do in terms of watering, 7 or 8 minutes early in the morning and then 7 or 8 minutes that same night. Or they could water once that day for 15 minutes. You could go either way.
Well, and there are some guidelines that you have stated in the past, which I think are very helpful. One of them is that, if you water for 20 minutes, you're likely to have a runoff. If you water for 5 minutes and you stop and then you water again, you're probably going to have the ground permeated by the water, and so it's going to be better for your plants and for you too. So those are the kind of things that need to be on there, I think, as well. If people could do that, program the thing. But some people don't even know how to use it. And
we're going to talk about that in a minute. One thing I have been telling the public is if this is adopted the way we're talking about it right now by the council, and if we do allow this selective hand watering, what I tell people when I'm talking to them on the phone is, be very observant of your plants. And if you have a section of lawn that's getting a really serious dead-looking brown spot, go out with a water controlling and your hose and give it a little water, because that's not prohibited. Go water the potted plant that's wilting. By allowing this hand watering, what we do is we give our citizens the flexibility of addressing immediate issues that they see with their landscaping to try to preserve their landscaping, rather than just saying, oh, wow, I can't water for 3 more days. I just have to let this thing die. And that's one of the reasons why we tried to make these changes, to make it more flexible. And a lot of this is we're reacting to the emails and the phone calls that we're getting from our community.
And they can, I think, bank up some extra units by not watering as much right now and then saving it for later in the summer, maybe. Is that correct? I mean, you can go over in a certain month, as long as you're not over for the whole period.
Well, actually, the way the allocation program is set up is it is per billing period, but I certainly heard what Councilmember Mashburn said. Is there a way that we can bank units that people have, where they have 24 units in a billing period and they've only used 20? Is there a way to bank those 4? We're going to get together with our finance department staff and see, is there a way that we can do this? I don't know if the answer is yes or no, or at least in the short term. It may not be possible in the next month or 2 months, but maybe it's something that we can get in place.
The question I get, though, is the 2 days. Some people think that they can water less with those 2 days and have a third day somewhere in the thing. Maybe everybody waters on Sunday when they're home or something.
Well, Ramiro asked me earlier, well, what if I walk out of my yard on a non-water day with the handheld controller and stand there and water my lawn? And am I going to get in trouble? And my opinion would be, no, you're hand watering, and because you're controlling it, you can't just walk away and abandon it and water run down the street. So
the proof of the pudding is going to be at the end of the period, when you get your bill and you find out you water too much. That's when you're going to be in trouble. So
some people, Mr. Mayor, will say, you know what? So what? I'll pay the penalty. I want my lawn to be green.
Yeah.
That's going to happen no matter what. Some people are going to be willing to do that. I have to admit, though, I walk my dog every morning through my neighborhood, and I am seeing that the lawns are getting pretty brown. Mm-hmm. I think the vast majority of our citizens are definitely following the guidance.
So I just wanted to respond to the comment that you made about the school district employee. And I am very concerned about children getting hurt because the grass is so brown that they're slipping and sliding and creating more accidents. So that probably needs a little more thought.
Yeah, we're going to reach out to the school district, and I do want to talk to them. I'll be calling the administrators and talking to them. Who do I talk to? What are the issues? We may go visit some of the school sites. We'll take a look with our public works director at some of our own park sites where they get a lot of baseball play, a lot of soccer play.
So yeah.
Obviously, safety is always a top concern.
Right. Safety is a really huge issue, whether it's at a school or at a park, or, I guess there's some private fields as well. So all of those are critically important.
Yeah, I'm going to bring something up that has been brought up to me, and I think the role of council is often, as a constituent, it's a voice to the people that don't necessarily come or have voices. But what I get asked a lot is this water thing, and I want you to respond to it, is how come you guys are building new houses? I mean, where do you get the water for the new houses? I mean, why are you guys out there approving houses? And I quite frankly don't know how to respond to them, but I told them, as your representative, and, I'm working you as a constituent, I'll bring it up, and I really don't know how to respond to them, but that's what I'm hearing.
That's a very good point. I actually took a voicemail message, I think 2 days ago, a very irate citizen, and maybe he was the same person that contacted you, and he was very upset about why the city has all these subdivisions that are going in all these houses. And so I listened to his voicemail, and I jotted down some notes, and then I called him back later that evening, and we actually ended up having a very nice conversation. Well, what I said about the housing issues is the reality is cities grow or die. If you don't have some growth, the economy in a city dries up. You don't have jobs. There's so much that the housing industry does for a community in terms of there are roofers, there are plumbers, there are carpenters, the furniture that people buy to put into the new home. All those things are part of the economy. Now, I'm not saying that I'm advocating for urban sprawl. I'm just saying that there has to be a certain amount of growth for a community to thrive. Now, in Vacaville's case, a number of these subdivisions that he actually named, the subdivisions that he brought up, I said, a number of those subdivisions have actually been on the books since before the recession. Some of them may be as old as 10 years old, that they've been ready to go. But when the recession hit in 2008, the market wasn't there. The developer chose not to develop the property. So it's been sitting there for years. Well, now the economy's starting to come out, and so the developer wants to build homes, and the homes are good for the economy. They create jobs. So the offset is, on one hand, yes, these new homes will demand water. They will need water, and it will affect our water supply. But one of the things we do before we approve subdivisions is we make sure that there's adequate water for these subdivisions. We don't just approve them without having water that we can't serve. We have to be able to serve. So we had in the end, we had a very nice conversation. He was extremely appreciative that I called him back, especially that I called him back at about 6:30 at night. And he was very grateful. It was a good conversation. But that's really kind of the answer to your question is
Thanks. I just brought it up because it was brought up before, so thank you. That's perfect.
Councilman Mashburn.
Really quick, Royce. Curtis, if you had anything else, I'm okay. Mr. Mayor, Curtis had more he wanted to.
No, that's perfect.
Okay. Just real quick, I, like Curtis, had calls from some constituents, and the question that was raised for me was why the ordinance didn't address pools or have anything to do with pool use in it, was so succinctly pointed out with the Google map picture of all the pools in my neighborhood that they sent me. So anyway, I told them I would ask, and then after that, when you're done with that one, you brought up our water reserves that we have for the city. And so would it be possible for you to share with us what our reserves look like? Maybe?
I will do that. Let me answer the pool question first.
Thank you, sir.
A pool generally takes between 20,000 and 30,000 gallons to fill. So it's a pretty huge amount of water to fill a pool. Once a pool is filled, and I think I've told the council this story, I have a pool, and I put about maybe an inch of water every 2 weeks. Now, the reality is, with my pool and my pool deck, if that was lawn instead of a pool, I'd be putting a lot more than an inch of water on that lawn over 2 weeks than I would a pool. So to maintain a pool, if you're careful not to let too much evaporation. To maintain a pool is not an excessive use of water. It's when you drain and fill it. Now, we have certainly heard from people that, why don't you place a moratorium on pools? We haven't currently proposed one. We could certainly consider that. I don't really think that that's the easy hanging fruit on the tree that's going to get us to 32%. We could consider that. I have actually received a lot of phone calls from members of the public saying, my pool needs repair. I have to repair it. I'm going to have to drain it to repair it. It's got this really horrible crack in it. And so what we told people is, well, try to do it before July 1st, because we may have, and somebody who drains a pool right now and fills it, they're going to pay if this is adopted, they'll pay the excessive use penalty. There'll be a penalty associated with it, and it'll probably be, I don't know, maybe the penalty would be $100 or something like that to fill a pool. I actually calculated that one time, but I've forgotten the number. So we currently aren't proposing restrictions on pool because I really don't think they're a huge water waster.
I'm certainly not opposed to doing that either.
So, the last question you had about water numbers, if you'd allow me to finish my presentation, I do have the last slide I have is where we're at water-wise. So maybe we can finish this through real quick. So there's actually a lot of comments we've received. A couple of them were just mentioned. I'd just like to read these real quick. These are generally from emails I get. I believe citizens should be allowed to water on their own initiative. The fines should take care of the overuse. I would like consideration for longer hours for landscape watering. I would suggest prohibiting watering from noon to 6 p.m. or noon to 8 p.m. You saw what some of the other communities were doing. Vacaville should stop building all these new homes and save the water for existing residents. The city should not be allowing pools to be built during the drought. So these are pretty common threads here. It would be nice, since hand watering is permitted for plants, for drip irrigation to also be allowed for these plants. And you see that we've included this consideration. I've been conserving water for a while now, and I've let my grass die. My neighbors should be doing the same. And finally, this last one has a little bit of sarcasm to it, so I enjoyed it because I like to try to keep it light if I can. Let's not waste our time trying to enforce water waste until we become reactive rather than proactive. I could have swore that was a Davis resident that wrote that, but I'm sorry those people that live in Davis. I know there's some behind me. Okay, so we have a summary of our recommended actions. We are recommending to implement days of the week limitations on the irrigation of outdoor landscaping and lawn by sprinkler irrigation. We are recommending to allow the selective hand watering of individual plants, potted plants, and hanging plants with a watering can, a hose, with a control nozzle, or a drip irrigation system without limitations. We're recommending to revise language in the Urban Water Shortage Contingency Plan regarding penalties for excessive water use. We are also recommending that Council direct staff to implement residential seasonal water use allocations as presented in your report. And we are recommending that Council direct staff to implement fines and penalties. And I'd like to close with actually having Ramiro run through a couple of the programs. We've been touting these programs a lot. I want to continue beating that drum because these are good programs.
So, and we've talked about these programs before, but the first one being is the water efficient landscape rebates, which again provides up to $1,000 for the replacement of lawn. The high-efficient washer rebates, the smart irrigation controller rebates, and the water-efficient fixtures. These are all items that we provide in partnership with the Solano County Water Agency as a way to give resources to our residents to do so. I do want to mention that at this point right now, because it's the end of the year, that pretty much the funding for these programs have run out. We've actually had the funding for the landscape rebates run out once before. We had additional funding made available, and then that funding has run out again. And so people who are calling right now, because that is probably our most popular program, they're getting on a waiting list. Once they're able to do that, the program is going to be refunded again starting in July, and then we'll be able to resume making these particular items and programs available. The second program that I really want to talk about a little bit, because this really focuses on so much of some of the questions that have been asked, is our residential and commercial survey program. And this is where we actually have trained individuals come out to your residence, and they will look both indoors and outdoors in your home, and they provide a number of services. What they do is that they look for leaks, which is always a first good place to determine, where can I save water. So they'll help you find leaks. They'll help you know how to read your meter. They will try to look at all of the different areas, your kitchen, your bathroom, where water use occurs, and give you suggestions. And then they'll look outdoors, and they'll look at your landscaping, and they'll look at your irrigation to make suggestions there. And one of the things that we've heard is the fact that people have a hard time trying to figure out how to do their controller. And I'm right there with it. My wife actually does my controller, and so I shouldn't be admitting that, but that's the case. And so it's difficult for all of us. But what these folks will actually do is go up and they will set up the controller for the resident, walk them through what to do. Here's what you do for next time. And so this is a program that, again, it's free of charge to residents. We highly encourage them to use it. Typically, the only residents that will see this are our top users, and we are going to be reaching out to our top water users again to make sure that they get the information and that we work with them to try and help them to save. But we encourage all of our residents to take advantage of the program. And so the number to call is 410-5469. Additional resources, we have our City of Vacaville website that you just saw, our Solano Saves Water website, which is actually the Solano County Water Agency. And just like Royce, I'm getting a whole lot of calls, a lot of emails. I get several calls and emails every day. Happy to answer any questions. We're getting all kinds of questions. As we get questions that are being asked a lot, we're putting that on our frequently asked question tab as well, so that people can see that and know that if they think they haven't asked the question or the question hasn't been asked before, it probably has been.
So before we go to the recommendation, Councilmember Mashburn asked a question. If you go 2 more slides to the end.
Yep.
I put together this slide just in case the question came up. A year ago, I gave a presentation to the council, and I went through kind of our worst-case scenario in terms of our water supply situation. So I've updated that information. The column that you see on not the far left, but the second one is the 2014 actual use of water. The first row is our state water project allocation from the Delta. The second row is our Solano project entitlement that the city has, our allocation. Then we have carryover storage. We bank water that's unused in Lake Berryessa, so we track that separately. And then we have our groundwater well. So that 2014 is the actual amount we used from each of these sources. And we totaled 16,300 acre feet in 2014. So our current year, 2015, what is our available supply? If we're going to use around 16,000 acre feet, how much do we actually have available? Well, we actually have a little over 2,000 acre feet from the State Water Project this year. We've got over 8,800 feet from the Solano Project, our basic allocation. Then we have 24,000 acre feet stored in Lake Berryessa. We've got a lot of water stored in Lake Berryessa. And then we have 8,100 acre feet that is our sustained yield from our groundwater source. So we have over 43,000 acre feet of water available for this year. We'll probably use about 16,000, maybe a little bit less if our water conservation measures increase. So what happens the following year if we get no rain? Well, if we don't get any rain this winter, it's very likely that the State Water Project will allocate us nothing because we are so dependent upon the snow melt, which has been really bad. So let's just say that zeroes out for the next 3 years. We have our 8,500 acre feet from the Solano Project. We would have 23,800 after we've used some of our carryover, the 8,100 from the groundwater wells. In 2016, we're anticipating having about 40,000 acre feet. That's over 2.5 times our typical annual usage. And I don't want to walk through all these numbers, but you see each of these years, even into 2018, we still have over 20,000 acre feet available for the city. And the assumptions I've used here, too, is that Lake Berryessa watershed does not get much rain and the lake level drops. Well, what happens when the lake level drops to certain levels, then we get restrictions on Lake Berryessa water. And I've incorporated these in here in these 3 bullets at the bottom. 5%, 10%, 25%. So for the next 3 years, we are in excellent shape water-wise. Now, if this drought continues for 4 years and Lake Berryessa dries up in 2018 and we lose that source, we cannot survive on our groundwater wells alone. That only provides about 50% of the city's use. So this is why we're conserving water, is because we want to save that Lake Berryessa source for as long as we can. So that finishes my presentation. Obviously, our recommendation is by simple motion to adopt the subject resolution, and I would be glad to entertain any further questions that the council may have.
Any questions by the council at this point? If not, I'm going to open it up for public comment. Would appreciate keeping it to about 3 minutes so we still got a lot more to go on this agenda tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm Dr. Jim Mellott. I live on Limerick Way. I'll make it quick and short. In 2013, my bride and I made a conscious decision. We stopped watering the front lawn completely. I yanked out the sprinkler system. I cut it off completely. In the backyard, we stopped watering the lawns, and my wife and I decided to plant plants and our fruit trees in pots. So my wife is now a pot farmer, and I'll turn it over to her to finish this.
Yeah, thank you for a little bit of humor. We need it tonight.
And I would be the wife, the pot farmer. Not that I farm pot, but I put everything that I have growing is in pots. I've made a concerted effort to conserve water. And I've been doing this for a long, long time. I shred almost all of my documents along with the cardboard boxes that don't have the real shiny stuff on them. And I use that as mulch. And believe me, that really saves a lot of water. My husband and I, okay, if you're sensitive, close your ears. We shower together. And that saves water, too. Now, I've been out here for a long, long time. I'm not a California native, unless you consider the fact that I was conceived just outside of Vallejo. My dad was a submarine sailor. But, the bottom line is that the last big drought, I was down in the Bay Area, and I was a hippie at the time. And that was a really nasty, nasty drought. But we had a motto of, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. So we don't flush during the nighttime. We're older now. We get up and go pee a couple of times during the night, and we don't flush. So we're doing our concerted effort. We found out, however, though, because we had already let our lawn die, that we're not eligible for the rebate for putting in something else besides grass.
Yeah.
It's already dead. You have to let it die in a timely fashion, apparently. I guess we missed that boat. I'm also wondering, and perhaps you can answer this for me, both my husband and I are disabled veterans. I'm rated at 70%. We both have prescriptions for the hot tub use in the backyard. And I understand when you talk about that 1 inch is not a whole lot of water, but a hot tub is kept at a higher temperature, which means the bacteria can grow a little bit faster in there. And we're concerned with the amount of chemicals that we put into the water. So we change it a little bit more often than maybe somebody else would. What kind of dispensation are you offering to people that have medical needs that maybe need a little bit more water?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we had proposed to the council that we could make additional allocations. I don't have a number in mind. We certainly are open to that. A medical reason is an obvious reason for additional water use. We're open to that. I'm actually going to speculate from what you've said that if you provided either Ramiro or I with your address and we looked up your water use, I'm going to guess that you're already well under the allocation number. You're one of the 83% that's probably well under the allocation because of the things that you're doing.
I'm sure that we are now, but I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And I have concerns, too, about the rapid growth that I see around Vacaville. We're moving in a lot of families. We're moving in a lot of consumers. And, I don't know if you've looked outside lately. It's not raining. It's not raining. I think maybe if we look at controlling some of that growth, I see a lot of places getting built. I really do. And I see some high-density places like out on 80, that great, big, huge apartment complex. It's not just that complex, but those people are washing their cars. There are parks that are going in. People are using swimming pools, whether it's a city pool or wherever they are. People are using water recreation things. They're going to the gym. They're showering there instead of at home. People are using water. Please, let's control our growth. Please.
Well, actually, the numbers for May, our goal is 32% coming up, but in May we actually had a reduction by 34%. So we actually exceeded it. So
that's really nice, and I'm proud to hear that. But let's keep it up.
Yep.
I moved here because I like this.
We definitely
I like
need
this
to.
little
I
town.
think people are responding to it. Everybody I talk to is really trying to find out how to best do it. And your suggestions are helpful. I put a cover on my pool, and I did that 3 weeks ago. I haven't even put an inch of water in it. So, I mean, it really does. In fact, I told the guy who helps me with my pool that I was doing that, and he said, great, because you're going to save a lot of money on chemicals as well.
You do save the money on chemicals, and if you heat your pool at all, of course, the hot tub's got to be heated. Well, maybe not sometimes during Vacaville summers. I think Vacaville is a Spanish word for pizza oven.
Thank you. Thank you for your suggestions.
Thank you very, very much.
Stop by at the end of the council meeting. I'd be glad to give you my business card, and we'd love to talk to you.
And we had an energy audit done recently, and I'm wondering if you might be able to do a water audit where you can come out to the house and show us where we can save more water. And if we do really well and we follow your suggestions, don't we get a rebate? And I don't want the cash rebate. I'd like a gallon rebate, and I'd like to be able to donate that to somebody else that needs it more than I do. Thank you.
Write down this phone number. They do the audits.
Got it written down. Thank you.
If I could add just one other thing too, in terms of the landscape rebates, that we actually are providing some latitude on that, so we're not holding fast and firm, because what we certainly don't want to do is tell people that, well, just because you did the right thing by allowing your lawn to go dormant or to actually die, that now you can't be eligible for the rebate. And so we have provided some leeway, and we certainly would look at everyone's situation on a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
The name Ken Stockton, live in Leisure Town, and I'm on the board of directors over there. A couple of points and a couple of questions. First of all, I heard the word brown twice. We're using golden in Leisure Town. We're in the Golden State. And some people said the name actually Golden State came from the hay in the fields, not from the gold in the ground. So that's what we're trying to do. Then a question, what will Leisure Town be defined as far as, is it commercial, residential?
We would have to actually talk to you. I don't know enough about Leisure Town's situation.
1,153 homes.
And
single family.
I'm assuming there's single family homes. Yeah. There's probably a homeowners association type group.
Right.
So
all metered.
They would probably be single family residences.
Residential.
They actually are, because it all depends on how they are based in our billing system, and I'm pretty sure that the Leisure Town Homeowners Association is residential.
Okay. Now another question, and I may have missed it. In your scenario you put up there, you talked about up to 8 homes getting 2 more units a month. What is what I'm going to call your baseline? You said 12 units a month during the winter. How many people in the household there?
So that's a household of 5.
Up to 5.
That's based upon a household of 5.
So 1 to 5.
So if you've got more than 5 people in a house, and you could apply for an additional allocation of 2 units per person, up to a total of 8 people in the house.
Okay.
That's what we're proposing to the council.
That answers that one. And Mitch talked about swimming pools, and other people have talked about other things. That in reality, swimming pools are addressed. Everything's addressed. This is a water allocation. It's 12 units. You're suggesting the easiest way to save water is through irrigation, but you're not saying anything about pools or irrigation or whatever. So pools really are addressed. It's water usage that's being, your amount of water. So really, it really is addressed. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Ken.
All right.
Hi, my name's Mike Hutchings. I live in the area here. I just got one quick question because one was already answered. I was one of the ones with the $1,000 rebate. It didn't work. The other question is our reserve underground water. What were you saying the gallons were?
We have a sustained yield of 8,100 acre feet of water. An acre foot of water. Well,
and that's for our city only?
It's 1 acre. Well, we had a study done on our municipal groundwater wells. And if we pump more than 8,100 acre feet in a year from our well field, we could damage the aquifer. It actually happened back in 1983. The city did pump about 8,300 acre feet, and it took several years for the aquifer to rebound. So we've been very careful not to overpump the aquifer. We stay well below that 8,100 acre foot number.
Okay, and I just have one other question. It was brought to my attention, and it's probably a rumor, but you can clarify it for me. I understand the city of Vacaville has been selling water to Benicia.
We did sell water to Benicia last year. Benicia and Vacaville, Fairfield, we are members of the Solano County Water Agency. All of the Solano County cities were instrumental in getting Lake Berryessa built, which is the primary water supply. Benicia ran out of water. And so they came to the Solano County Water Agency and said, we're in a hurt. We're out of water. We need some water. Is somebody willing to sell us some water? And because we had this large amount of water in carryover storage, we stepped up and we sold Benicia some water. Now, the interesting thing is about 12 or 13 years ago, the reverse situation happened. Vacaville hit some hard water times, and Benicia sold Vacaville water. So this is part of us being a part of an agency where we reciprocate, we help each other out in tough times. And so, yes, we did sell water to Benicia.
Okay, and also Anheuser-Busch is probably the largest drawing water from Berryessa. Is that not true?
Anheuser-Busch buys water from the city of Fairfield, and I do believe that most of their water probably comes from Lake Berryessa.
Cut back on the beer, we'll have our extra water. That's all.
Thank you. I've got one other. Should I go with mine?
Yeah, let's see if somebody else can. Well, let me see if anybody else wants to speak. You can come up after that.
My wife just brought something up.
Just two quick questions. Now, I'm just a renter. I don't own a home, so I don't really have a dog in the show here, but I hope to in the future. And the first question I have is these fees that you're proposing. They don't seem to be very deterring, in my opinion. I'm just, but then again, like I said, I'm not a homeowner, so I don't know what the impact would be. But it seems like they could be higher. What's your feedback on that?
Well, here's my opinion on the penalties for excessive water use. We're not interested in making money off of punishing people. What we want the penalty amount to be is just high enough so someone looks at the penalty and looks at what they get if they pay that penalty in terms of a benefit, having a greener lawn, let's say, and they say, you know what, it's not worth that much money for me to have my lawn that much greener. So if you triple that penalty, all you're doing is just taking money from them. You want the penalty to be just enough so that it's a disincentive. So someone says, on the example I gave, wow, that's a $34 additional bill on top of the actual bill. Right. Now my bill, when you add the sewer factor into it, is now my bill is like almost $400 for 2 months. Wow, I think I better conserve water, because the water use also goes onto the sewer portion of the bill too.
And the state plans on fining the cities as well if they exceed it.
Okay. So that's the logic behind it. Is we don't want to just have this monstrous fee that just punishes people and puts them into a tough financial situation. Everybody's still having a hard time coming out of the economic recession as it is. Right. You just want it to be enough that it's a disincentive.
Well, I'm very pleased to see. I mean, until tonight, I had no idea about any of this, other than the fact that we've let our lawn go months ago. But it was nice to see 86% of the residents are keeping it.
That was last year. I think the mayor mentioned that we are at 34% in May. Our community has really stepped up. We're very proud.
Before
of it.
anything,
We're very proud of the
came
community.
out, people on their own will start saving and calling and talking about how they can save the water. So
That's
we're
great.
very pleased with the response of the community.
Yeah, I'm pleased to hear it. Now, the last question I have is, what about Genentech and Janssen Pharmaceuticals? As a student of applied biotechnology, I discovered, to my shock, how much water usage these companies use to, make their drugs. I mean, enormous. We're talking tens of thousands of gallons.
Well, we made a conscious decision when the governor and the state came out with their mandate was to focus on landscape irrigation, because basically 45% of Vacaville's water use is residential landscape irrigation. What we met with the business community and we talked with the business community. What we don't want to do is we don't want to take a Genentech or the Fairfield Brewery and suddenly tell them, you have to reduce your water use by 35%. Many of these companies are large international corporations, large national corporations. They may make a business decision. Now, so let's say Genentech's parent company says, well, the Vacaville plant's really not that profitable now because we've had to reduce our production. So why don't we just lay off all those people and we'll transfer that product to our plant in Germany? Well, that would be a horrible decision for the city to make because it would take away jobs, that vital high-tech jobs in our community. So we made the conscious decision not to go after production water use of our commercial customers. What we've done is we've told the commercial customers, we would like you to reduce your landscape irrigation. Genentech is a perfect example. They have removed 60,000 square feet of sod from their campus so that they're not irrigating that anymore. So that's how we've chosen to work with the commercial customers.
I'm sure this is a super touchy balancing of scales act that you guys are doing, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. And now I know more facts here. I'm going to be paying a lot more attention and trying to encourage others to support your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Well, no, wait. We got somebody in the back, Ken. Hang on a second. We'll call you up. We haven't forgotten about you.
My name is Michael Oswald. I've lived in Vacaville for 41 years. I'm an Indiana farm boy that had carried water to the hogs when the well went dry, so I really appreciate the use of water, plus the retired Navy that went on water hours. Saltwater showers are another fun. One of the things I want to know, do you have a line or a website for hints on saving water, or are you just concentrating on saving water irrigation?
We do have, on our website, we have a water conservation page. There are a number of links there. There's a number of different hints and recommendations, and there's a lot of information on there. We're trying to get a little more organized so it's a little more easier for people to move around within the website. But if you go to cityofvacaville.com, and I think it's /Save Water.
Save water, right. I've got that. Do you take input from the audience regarding saving water? One of my projects was putting a quart bottle of water in every commode on Treasure Island before I retired from the Navy. That's a lot. That's 2,000 homes.
Both Ramiro and my contact information is on the website. You're welcome to contact us with suggestions.
Thank you.
Yes, we appreciate your input. Now, wait a minute. Have you been up around this one issue? Yeah, you have. Let's. No, you haven't? Come on. You have. So I'm just going to give everybody a chance, first of all. Anybody else?
Found the way around. See, because he just it's not Leisure Town. It's kind of Karen Stockton. I just wanted to address the man here. When you're sending out those sites that are available for people to get information, we took our lawn out. We took out 1,100 square feet, but we went through the county. But some people don't know, like these people, that you have to leave your grass in until they come out and look at your yard. Could that be included in whatever information you send out? Mainly, we have a lot of seniors in Leisure Town that are starting to take out their yards, and they would not qualify for that rebate unless they did it in that.
Sure.
So if you could add that, I'd appreciate
we can add that. You betcha.
Yeah, and maybe we can link their website to ours, too.
It actually is.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah. Okay. You're coming back?
I am coming back.
There may be somebody out there ahead of you. No, wait a minute. Okay, go ahead.
They're not coming up, are they? I want to know what happens to the extra money that's collected from the penalties and the fines. Where does that money go?
Well, it would go into the water fund. The water fund right now is having additional expenditures to do the enforcement program. We've hired 2 enforcement technicians. We're funding a part-time administrative person to take phone calls and respond to things. So we've actually incurred additional costs as a result of this drought. The finance department may be ending up having to do overtime because of some of the billing issues we're talking about, and so they would like to have cost recovery from the water fund rather than have that charged to the general fund because this is a water fund issue. So my proposal to the city manager and to the council would be that the fines and penalties would come into the water fund to help offset the cost of the enforcement program.
Is there a way for us to bank the water that we're not using now and use it later in the year? Or is there a way to donate it to somebody else, like a school or a park, that needs more water than we do?
Councilmember Mashburn brought this up, and we're going to look into it.
Thank you.
One of the things that you got to realize is that if we cut water back by 34%, the costs are going to also be still there. And so the revenue's not coming in. So you've got, somehow we even have to take a look at the rate structure at some point if we continue on with this thing.
We must have different water companies because I pay very little on water. I pay a heck of a lot on everything else.
Yeah.
It shows up on the water bill, but it's not the water.
Yeah, it's not the water, it's the wastewater treatment plant. That's correct. Okay. Now, Ken, I think nobody else is coming. Oh, there is somebody back coming in. Hey, we got to stay here too, so we'll be happy to have you here with us.
Good evening, Council. My name is Roberto Valdez. I'm a longtime resident here in Vacaville. I came because I was seeing all this ongoing presentation about your staff here, water conservation staff, program in TV, and I find it, I have to say that I want to applaud you for taking, finally getting serious about water, trying to improve your staff here and trying to enforce it, getting serious about it, trying to educate the public. I think that's all good. And I really want to applaud that first couple that came up here, that elderly couple. I can't believe that at their age they're still thinking. And it's hopeful to see people like that really in this state. What I want to say to you is that I've been to your presentations. I'm aware of the water issue. It's not new. It's ongoing. It's a 50-year problem for California. Whatever you do here, just bear in mind, it's not just about what's good for Vacaville. It's what's good for the whole state of California. And we need everybody to be on board, the individual users as well as the farmers, as well as the industry. And I would like to see not just a moratorium on water pools, but also on golf courses. You've got a golf course in the books with regard to Lower Lagoon Valley there that you want to implement or you approved, and that's still going to happen. So you need to think about twice what you're doing with the development. Yes, I agree. You have too much development here already. Whether it's 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, it is way, way too long for what we need, and too much. And people are telling you over and over the same issue, individual residents, farmers. We need to think seriously. You need to think about the impact, environmental impact. Let me say about the environmental impact. I would like to see that this city makes its genuine effort to maintain our waterways, our creeks, Lagoon Valley Lake. I don't want to see it dry up like it happened 3 years ago. A lot of, besides people going for recreation, there's also a lot of wildlife that goes there because they need the water. And individual residents should take the initiative to help their wildlife, birds, cats, whatever. You don't have to be wildlife. Everybody needs water. Everybody drinks the same water. We all need it, and we all need to get very serious about it. So don't be afraid. Get bold about it and start thinking about it, regardless whether we have this Lake Berryessa. I don't see, in my opinion, there's nothing to prevent Mr. Obama, the President Obama, or anybody from shutting down that plant if they need to do it for the state, and they will do it. So, don't just think about what's good for this city. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? If not, Ken. Stockton. I hope it's good, Ken.
It's not that big a deal. It's just some clarification from these guys. My wife pointed out Leisure Town, Ken Stockton again. A lot of Leisure Town is common property. We have our lawns in front of our houses, individuals on them. We have those green strips in the big common area. Will they be termed differently? They're metered separately, obviously.
I believe it's already in the system, and whether if it's a homeowners association, it's probably in the system as a residential customer. We would certainly look at it, but it's already in the system.
It'll be, of course, a much different criteria. It's not a resident. It's not 5 people. It's not 8 people. It's a big bunch of lawn.
It's actually a good point.
We're down to 2 days
the issue
a week
of homeowners associations that just irrigate, say, common areas. You raise a very good point. We need to take a look at that and see how all of this impacts that.
Okay.
So again, they are in the system as residents, and we've actually been in contact with a couple of your board members, and so we're working with them, and we're actually having our survey program come out.
Phil, you're talking to Phil?
We spoke with Phil. We've also made contact with Joan. I've spoken with your landscaper, and I also have a call into your management company, and so we're going to have our survey coordinator come out and meet with them and see what we can do to help.
Good. Okay, thanks. I'm done.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anyone else out there? If not, I close the public portion of this, and Mayor...
I'll just
Vice
go
Mayor
ahead
Hunt.
and say, Royce, thank you very much. I think this was a very hard process. I think we've arrived at a pretty good solution. And I don't, this drought is for real. 60 Minutes just released a satellite map showing how dry California is. But by simple motion, adopt the subject resolution.
On the question, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. The only caveat I'd like to add is that we need to keep looking at this thing to see how we're doing, but also to make revisions when we see they're necessary to be made, so that we don't destroy everybody's yard and everybody's other, investments as well. So
My proposal, Mr. Mayor, would be to come back to the council at the end of summer with a status report on where we're at. And if we're ahead of the game, I would like to see a healthy margin ahead of the game. We may relax some things, but we certainly want to be flexible. We don't want to continue, putting strict requirements on our citizens if they've gone above and beyond. So I would suggest that staff comes back to the council at the end of summer with a status report on where we're at. We certainly, Mayor mentioned it, we may want to talk about budget issues and if impacts to the water fund, but I think at the end of summer would be a good time to have that conversation.
And I want to congratulate Ramiro as well for working hard on this. I know you've sweated this out, and so appreciate your hard work. And I was trying to see a reaction to you when people were bringing up suggestions, and you didn't even flinch. You did very well. So
Probably the one thing that we're telling most people who are checking when they're looking at their usage, when they're looking at everything, and they're expressing their concern. Oh my goodness, I've done this, I've done that, I've done everything. When we look at their usage, the one thing that I've told people more than anything else after I look at their usage and the fact that they've really done a great job of conserving is keep doing exactly what you're doing. That's the single most common advice that we've been giving our residents as they've been calling in, because they've been doing a great job, and it's reflected in the numbers.
well, thank you for that. Councilman.
I just want, before we vote, there's a couple council members and myself that we were talking about the parks, the safety for the children. So we're going to vote this in, but we're still leaving that out there so we can.
That's correct.
Maybe adjust that.
I would say that it's a little bit of unfinished business. We'll do some homework working with the school district.
And we're
talking
okay
to them.
when we pass this tonight that we're not just, I want that on the record, that's all. I don't want
Well,
2 weeks
again,
from now to
and-
say, no, it's 2 days and that's it.
I completely agree.
Okay, great.
Well, and the gentleman brought up a good point. It's not just all landscaping. We got to think about saving waters in other ways. So I've been putting water in a pail when I start to shower, and then I use it to flush the toilet. So, it's great. Anyhow, thank you. And do we have a motion?
We had a motion and a second
And a
already.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.